to Off the Carousel on Field 68, our introduction to all 60-plus first-year head coaches across Division One. Today, we're getting to know new James Madison coach Preston Spradlin. Coach Spradlin joins the Dukes after a successful run at Morehead State that included a pair of NCAA tournament appearances and 4 straight 20-win seasons to conclude his tenure. Welcome to the show, Coach.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it, man. Excited to be on here.
I guess let's start with this. You're still pretty young. You're 37. You've been a head coach for, 7-8 years since 2017. What did getting thrown into the fire at a head job like Morehead State so early in your career do for you?
Well, yeah, you're right. By the numbers, I'm still young, but you look at the gray hairs I've accumulated, especially since taking over here at JMU. They would probably beg to differ, but yeah, I think obviously everyone's path is different, and I'm very thankful, for the opportunity that I got there at Morehead State, a place that is near and dear to my heart because, I was able to really grow, right, and it's a type of place that really had great belief in me and allowed me to grow through a lot of my mistakes, which I think is really important as a young coach. And honestly, I don't know if that's as common nowadays, right? Everybody wants to win right away. And so just, really thankful for the opportunity to be able to, as you said, kind of get thrown right into the fire there. And you kind of figure out and you learn pretty quickly, who you are as a coach, what kind of program you want to have, and then certainly, what kind of players that you want to recruit to build that program with. And so able to have a little bit of time to figure that piece out. And then, as you mentioned at the beginning of the interview, once we were able to, as a staff, figure that out, the success was able to be consistent.
Yeah, I mean, how challenging was that though, right? I think at one point you had 3 straight sub 500 seasons. As a young guy who was still kind of figuring out your identity as a coach, I mean, what challenges did that start present, and what did you learn from it that allowed you guys to turn the corner?
Yeah, without question, just tons of challenges with that. I mean, our first full season as a head coach, when I had the program from day one, we won 8 games, right? And so it was a lot of challenges in there. Honestly, I think the greatest lesson I learned was probably the season prior to that, when I was the interim coach and taking over. And, we lost a good bit when I first took over, and we had to, make some hard changes to our lineup and had to really figure out an entirely different way to play with that team and try to teach it on the fly while you're, competing and playing. But I really just tried to keep everything about the players as best I could. That year we had 6 seniors, and so I knew that their window to have a great experience playing there in college was shrinking. And so just really investing in that. And I think that's really boded well for every decision that we've made each and every year that's followed that, just because you never know what type of situations are going to come up, right? And so there's going to be difficult situations, there's going to be hard decisions. Navigating either one of those is a lot easier if you kind of know, what your North Star is. And that's, keeping it about the players. I think I learned my emotions a lot better, right? And figuring out, who I am as a coach and how to respond and how to hold myself accountable, in front of the players. I think, one thing that I think allows myself to relate to the guys, and this is an important piece to my identity and to our program, is hey, I'm not always right, and I don't have to be, and so I'm totally fine with coming in a film room, locker room, or a timeout and saying, hey, look, that was the wrong thing. That was on me. I'll get it back for you guys. And so I think that humility piece is really important, and it gives our guys the freedom that they're going to make mistakes, right? At the end of the day, basketball is the greatest teacher of life. That's what I tell everyone. And it's such a chemistry-driven game, and all of that is just dependent on your response, right? The best team on the floor is typically the one that's going to respond the best, right? And go on runs and stop runs for the other team. And so once I realized that my team is going to take on the same persona and identity that I do, I started being way more mindful of my response to everything, right? Whether it was good or bad, and really just diving in and keeping it about the players. And so I'm thankful for the adversity that I had early in my career, and being at a place where I could fail a good bit so that I could learn what not to do, so that I could consistently get to what was going to work best for me.
For those that don't know, I know you went to Alice Lloyd, which is, I believe, a school of about 600 people, and then from there you get on at Kentucky as a GA and a sports staffer under Coach Cal. Plenty of questions you could ask about that experience, but I guess my first one would be, how massive an adjustment was it to go from a tiny school like that to, the biggest fishbowl in college basketball?
It was huge. I mean, even just a cultural standpoint, I mean, I didn't know how to register for classes, walking to class, it would take 30 minutes trying to figure out how to park at a university that's got, almost 30,000 students. So all of that was a huge adjustment for me, moving to a city in Lexington, learning to parallel park on the street, all these things, right? So it was a huge adjustment in a lot of ways, but from a basketball standpoint, it was amazing because, I was the kind of guy that was, I was a gopher, right? You run around and you do whatever's asked, and you do it with a smile on your face. And but I got a PhD in, learning from obviously a Hall of Famer for 5 years. You just can't replace that, right? And I tell everybody, Kevin, in this profession, probably most professions, but especially college basketball, if you want to be a coach, it's going to be dependent upon your ability to just figure things out, right? So when I hire young people in this profession, I say, hey, you're going to make your mark if you can come to me every day and say, hey, coach, this is what I was thinking needed to be done. Here's my ideas to get it done. Or if I ask you to do something, and then I have to show you how to do it, and then I have to ask you the next time around it needs to be done to do it again, then you're probably not going to make it very good in this business. So your ability to just figure things out, and you've got to have a willingness to try to do a task and figure it out and fail. And then you got to go back and learn from it and make sure you do a better job with it. But again, that response piece is extremely important.
As a Kentucky native, how surreal was it to work for Kentucky and be a part of that brand, especially as such a young coach, right? Your first like real coaching job was at the University of Kentucky. I'm not sure a lot of guys can say that.
Yeah, no, it was really special because, as you probably know, in the state of Kentucky, basketball is really important. It's a way of life, and the fandom is very real. And I grew up watching UK games. Every time that they would play, that's what you do. You watched them. My family would go to games and things when they could, SEC tournament, and so it was really cool for me to be there. And then just the influx of former players who I grew up watching, being able to build relationships with those guys. I was on staff with Scott Padgett, Tony Delk, guys like Wayne Turner was on staff, and so just being able to build relationships with those guys was really cool for me, just because I grew up watching them. But it was an unbelievable feeling.
Um, you know, Kentucky's probably one of the few states that I would call college basketball states, right? Like kids grow up in Kentucky and they're not worried about NBA players. They're worried about Kentucky players, right? And I think Indiana, Kansas probably similar. How much did that influence your love for the game and why you wanted to coach in college?
Yeah, without question. Again, I didn't even play anything other than basketball growing up, and to be honest with you, I always knew I wanted to coach. I can't remember ever wanting to do anything else other than be a basketball coach. And truthfully, I wanted to be a high school basketball coach and a social studies teacher. That was kind of my goal. Then once I got into college, I started working basketball camps all over the place, and obviously playing, small college basketball. I said, man, this is I'd really like to get involved at this level, and started really working hard to make the connections and meeting people and trying to figure out different avenues to do that. And certainly it worked out. But basketball is really important in the state of Kentucky. It's I tell everybody, basketball, bourbon, and horse racing are the three things that command a lot of attention and notoriety there in Kentucky, and rightfully so.
Uh, I think the thing that really stands out when I look back at your tenure at Morehead State was just how elite you guys were at evaluating talent, right? Especially in this day and age. Oh, it's all about the portal. It's all about NIL. You guys go out and discover. I mean, maybe that's too big a word, but go find a Janai Broom who becomes, an All-American level player. Even this past year with Riley Minix from the NII level, a guy who might play in the NBA. What's allowed you guys to be so successful at finding those under the radar gems? And is there a common thread that comes with recruiting in this day and age that's allowed you guys to be so successful?
Without question, I think that the big misconception when recruiting is a lot of people just look at the transactional and the recruiting aspect of it, right? Certainly with NIL and things like that now. We've made our success because we've evaluated. We didn't out recruit anybody to get a guy like Janai, 4 years ago. We out evaluated. He played on the same court that every coach in the country saw him play. I mean, it was not like he flew under the radar. I think at the end of the day, my theory with this is whether it's high school recruiting, it's portal recruiting, whatever it may be, every player is missing something. Okay. And a guy may be 6 foot instead of 6'2", right? Or he may be a step slow, or he may not be an elite passer, whatever. You come up with whatever excuse that you have not to recruit someone. And so as people start to recognize what players are missing, they tend to fall down the depth charts to places like a Morehead State. And so for us, we would take a look at, we would say, what's that guy missing? And is it something we can fix? Is it something we can develop? And if the answer is yes, then it's going to be dependent on what's their personality, right? Do they love basketball or do they like it? Are they competitive? Do they have great self-awareness? What's their circle of influence? How are their parents? What's their humility? All of these things matter. They're huge factors in figuring out, can you fill in the gaps and basically supplement or develop whatever it is that they're missing. And a guy like Janai checked all those boxes. He had an unbelievable family that cared about him, and they wanted you to push their son. They wanted the best for him, and he was an ultra competitive player. He's extremely intelligent. His IQ for the game was off the charts, especially for a big guy. And you wouldn't normally say, well, these high IQ players are big, but they certainly can be. He was a little scrawny, skinny guy, right? And but he had a great work ethic and he was competitive. And so we looked at him and said, man, if he gets a little stronger, all these types of things, he could be a really good player. And thankfully, his family and everyone around him allowed us to be able to challenge him and push him in the right way. And that trust and that relationship was really, truly there. So that was very true of a player like him who became an All-American. It's very true of all the guys that we've seen and we've recruited and we've developed. And so I think, when you're fast forwarding to how you're building a roster and a team right now, a mixture of high school players and transfers, certainly a lot of transfers this time of year, it comes down to, making sure that what they're looking for matches up with what you need and peeling back the layers and still evaluating the people, not just the player, because in our programs and in the way we coach our guys, those two things go hand in hand with one another.
It's no secret you were, something of a wanted man this carousel. So what excited you about James Madison to make it the right job for you to take? What about this place made it, possible to leave Morehead? I know you were very happy there. You built a great foundation. You're winning. Like, why JMU this spring?
What's a great question. This was a very different spring for me. I'd been involved in some jobs over the years, and this year was very different, right? There was a pursuit that came with the phone calls from places, and so. But you're right. It was going to take a special opportunity and a special place for me to uproot my family and leave. We'd been at Morehead for 10 years. This is the first time, Kevin, I've ever lived outside the state of Kentucky. How about that? And so I brought plenty of bourbon with me, to keep me hold over, across the state line and all that. But it was going to take a special place. And I mean, a university that was going to fit, my personality, and it needed to be a community and a type of place that I wanted to raise my family, because I didn't want to take another job and say, hey, I'll go there, win, just so I could get another one. My intent is to be here for as long as I need to be here and to do things the right way. And I really felt like, lost some power there. I really felt like, just the ability, the resources here, the momentum, and all of those things really allowed me to be able to do that. And so the brand here at JMU is a great brand. The electricity did not go out, my friend. I promise you. I'm still figuring things out. Okay. But the brand is very real. And I think as you go through the coaching carousel, you take a look and you say the majority of jobs that open up in college basketball are typically someone got let go, right? because maybe the program's not in a good place and it's not winning. Um, James Madison, because of Coach Byington and their staff and the administration here, they saw the greatest success they've had in program history with 32 wins and a win in the NCAA tournament. And so for me, you could look at it and you could say, wow, those are some big shoes to fill. Or you could come in and say, man, they're already doing a lot of things right. The momentum, the excitement, the energy, the brand, all of that is already in place here. We just have to come in here and capitalize on all of those things. So being able to capitalize on the momentum was really important. And I wanted to be at a place that I felt was at the top of another league. I really felt like this was. I felt like the opportunity, the resources, the expectations, all of those things combined to make this the right spot for me. And again, I tell players when we're recruiting, go where you're wanted. James Madison really wanted myself, my family, and our staff to be here to run this program, and it worked.
Whether you are a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. After a 6-month season loaded with cross-country travel, I can promise you that proper recovery is a priority for me these days. That's why I'm excited that Unified Healing is sponsoring this episode of the Field of 68. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement System, or the EE system. If you haven't heard of the EE system yet, you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. Whether you're here in New Jersey or at one of the hundreds of other locations across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. If you're interested in experiencing the EE system technology for yourself, go to unifiedhealing.com/unified68 to learn more and find a center near you. That's UNIFYD healing.com/UNIFYD, the number 6, the number 8. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, including the EE system.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the momentum that the men's basketball program has at JMU, and 32 wins, an NCAA tournament win, but it feels like everything is rising at JMU. Football is booming. Other sports are really, really successful. How much does like an athletic department wide commitment to winning make it easier to say yes to a job like this?
Well, the impact is huge, right? It's immense. And just the energy once you step on this campus is very real. If you walked on this campus, you're going to think, man, this is an ACC school. The facilities, it's beautiful. It's a huge school. We have 23,000 students. And so it all elevates, right? And I think the leadership on the campus here really understands the value of athletics and what it can do when all of your sports, not just football and basketball, are having success. Then it elevates every department across a campus. And so they understand that here, so they invest in that here, and they want to make sure that continues to grow and keep us atop the league.
All right, last question for you, very important one. What happens when the bourbon supply runs out?
Oh man, well, luckily there'll be a lot of friends who are coming to visit, coming from Kentucky. It's amazing. The ladies in the bookstore here, after about 2 weeks of being here, I popped in one day and they said, "Coach, we've had an influx of people who are making orders from Kentucky, most specifically from Morehead, Kentucky." So there's already a lot of JMU fans that have crossed that state line, and they're going to continue to do that. So I'm sure once we get our schedule together here in the Atlantic Union Bank Center, they're going to be coming down to support the Dukes. And so we're really thankful of that, because 10 years at Morehead State, so many unbelievable relationships with my family and the people in the community. And so being able to continue a lot of those here at James Madison is really exciting.
Awesome, man. Well, we appreciate you taking the time. Congrats.